Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take this particular opportunity to thank God Almighty, our Creator, our Sustainer, for giving us this opportunity where, as scholars, as a family of faith, a global community, we are gathered to continue with our second Fratelli Tutti and Laudato Si conference. On behalf of our Vice Chancellor of Ummah University, Dr. Halima Sado Abdullahi, who has an international guest visiting her today. She sent her apology and she will not be able to be with us. And allow me to make the following short, quick remarks so that we are aware. First, please, she says, receive warm greetings from Ummah University family. She says she's congratulating the organizers, the local, regional, and international partners for standing together, working together to ensure that this second global conference become a reality. And then I was told to convey that Ummah University is a chartered Islamic university, which is Islamically faith-based. And all the programs run at Ummah University are accredited by Commission for University Education, both undergraduate and postgraduate programs. Ummah University, Tangaza University has got a working MOU to further, and then we also have a special relationship with Harmony Institute with the objective of advancing interfaith dialogue, cooperations, and grassroots community capacity building to benefit peace, to benefit sustainable development, and the awareness at the local level. Through this strategic relationship between Ummah University, Tangaza University College, and Harmony Institute, we were able to organize several conferences on different themes. We have run several inter-university forums during the COVID to rally interfaith contribution to the COVID pandemic encounters and also mitigations. We have organized a number of training workshops. We have organized several summer schools together. We have organized a number of research and academic dispensations. And it is my single honor to congratulate the partners once again for making the second global conference on Fratelli Tutti and Laudato Si a great success. Ladies and gentlemen, our partnership has been growing and attracting interest across the globe. Thank you so much for joining us. Allow me now, ladies and gentlemen, to share with you in a very brief way the synopsis for this special panelist. As you are aware, the world is in the world environment and climate is undergoing crisis. Anthropogenic activities are being blamed. And these anthropogenic activities have led to what we can call uncontrolled and unregulated overexploitations of natural resources. Problem of greediness, increased consumerism, profiteering economics have all been blamed. And the consequence is today the impact of climate change, which is being felt all over the world. It has now been felt that the religious values and virtues, the good morals that is derived from our different religious faith, have potential to complement efforts made by several governments, international organizations, and development partners with the objective of accelerating restorations of nature. This opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, has been appreciated under different international frameworks, agreements, and treaties. It is in this spirit that the Missionary University of US, Tangaza University, and Ummah University, and Harmony Institute, and its strategic partners in Indonesia, and also in some institutions from the Catholic institutions, have come up together to again create this global awareness on religion, environment, and climate crisis under the theme of our common action for the future. So remember, in this particular dialogue, we want to benefit from the Muslims and Christian faith they're contributing to this dialogue so that synergy can be realized, knowledge can be created, so that this particular effort to restore the mother nature will be appreciated. And in relation to Laudato Si, the foundation has already been well emphasized by Pope Francis in both documents, that is Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti. So the Global Interfaith Conference is organized by interfaith institution and faith-based university to achieve the following objectives: promote integrated environmental management approaches guided by scientific studies and religious values, so that we can bridge between the two. Examine the underlying issues of global environmental and climate crisis with a view to mitigate through religious values and improve the practices. To appreciate, ladies and gentlemen, the intrinsic goodness, diversity, and interconnectedness of nature in order to bring out a sociality of responsible stewardship, transformed attitudes and behavior. It is our hope and belief that through this conference, there will be opportunity to create ecological and spiritual education awareness among the global faith and non-faith communities to benefit peace building and social resilience. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my single honor to present to you our panelists who will be presenting during this particular panel too. Our first speaker will be Professor Michael Kip-Korir-Koech. Another speaker will be Dr. Anne Nyachit Omabia. We have got Dr. Joram Tarusarira. We have got David N. Munene, and we have got Sister Mary Francis Wangari Sebastian, LSSG. So allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to present to you the short biography of Professor Ambassador Michael Kip-Korir-Koech. Professor Michael Koech is a renowned and committed environmentalist. He has vast experience that set him apart from most, from formulating of the groundbreaking framework for environmental policies, establishing educational and government institutions to educate, research, and manage environmental issues, to representing the Republic of Kenya at high-level discussion across the globe. His knowledge and vast experience in environmental education and management truly makes his work stand out from many. For your information, ladies and gentlemen, I don't feel shy to convey to inform you that I have personally benefited from Professor Ambassador Michael Koech when he was Professor of Environment at Kenyatta University, and when he was the Director General of National Environment Management Authority, and when he was a Kenyan ambassador to UN. Professor, my mentor, it is my single honor to tell you welcome and make your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a PowerPoint presentation. Can I share that so that I can use that PowerPoint presentation?
Hello, Prof, please, we are not hearing you. Kindly increase the voice of your mic. Thank you. Please note that every presentation is 15 minutes. Thank you, Prof.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Okay.
You can share your presentation.
Yeah, I would like to share my presentation in PowerPoint. Can I get started now, Chair? Hello?
I don't know if we are hearing, Professor, we are not hearing your voice.
Yes, we can hear, Professor. He can go on.
I think, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think
your face is clear,
the moderator is having a mic challenge. The moderator is not hearing us, and we therefore I suggest that Dr. Adan, kindly, you cannot hear us if you're able to address that, because even previously during the interjections, you could not hear the interjections. for him to wait before we officially start. So I recommend that it would be sorted because Professor Koech can be clearly heard.
Okay, so what do we do?
Now you are clear, Prof. Now you are clear. Thank you.
We are clear.
Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you so much. What I would like to say is that I just want to thank our creator for providing us all with these opportunities and for this function and the coordination and the effort that we are all making in the area of restoring our environment that we as a human being have actually destroyed. And the first thing that we want to do is ask for forgiveness and start the work of restoring this environment as of yesterday, because we have actually destroyed nature for many years, and we need to do the work of restoration. So I want to appreciate the coordination, the arrangement, and the plans, and all those that are involved in this process to take all our efforts and then move on. So I think I would like to use my slides in making, highlighting some of the key issues related to these topics of religions and the environment. And I think I want to, okay. I would like to start by saying that religions generally, ladies and gentlemen, they play a very crucial role in managing our climate change and also in managing our resources in many aspects. And climate change, as many of you may know, is threatening humanity tremendously. And I just want to say that for those skeptics who said in the past, and we can still continue converting them, that climate change is a reality. Climate change is here. We can see science has witnessed it, and we need to learn from that and get back to work of restoring our destroyed environment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are a number of global changes and environmental changes that have taken place. There are very many COPs that have taken place globally. And I remember one of the COP in Copenhagen in 2009 is a COP that I attended personally and in joining the Kenyan delegation. And they have gone on ever since, and many people have participated in this. And I think I would like to highlight some of the key issues of the COP27 that was held recently in Egypt. And I believe some of you may have gone and participated face-to-face. Some of us followed that online, and I did. And I also followed COP27 of Glasgow online, and the 26, COP26. But I would like to just highlight some of the key issues here in Egypt, COP27. In cognizance of the negative impacts that we are doing and climate change effects that have occurred, particularly the damage that we have caused, and then we need the support that we are creating, including the droughts. I think the droughts, I might want to say something here about the droughts. The droughts evidence are just right here in this country. We have been seeing a number of counties, and those counties I think are over 20, and the drought itself is really very significant. We have seen it, it is affecting people. I think the Kenya government and others are now saying drought is a serious issue. We want to declare it as a policy and as a disaster that we need to address and need the government to address and all of us to address. That's one key thing that's affecting us, particularly in this region, in Kenya, East Africa. Floods is another one, and that one is actually recently been affecting Nigeria a great deal, these floods. And also these floods have been affecting, I think, part of the US, part of California in the US. And then the issues of rising sea levels. Rising sea levels, ladies and gentlemen, are a reality. And the reason why these rising sea levels are doing that because the melting Antarctica is melting, and then when the ice melts in those Antarctica regions, the water goes into the ocean, and when the water goes into the ocean, it makes the sea rise. And I just want to give you an example here of the sea level rise that is taking place. There is an island called Tuvalu, and in 2009, a head of a delegation of Tuvalu was giving a presentation in Copenhagen, COP9, and this head of delegation, ladies and gentlemen, was making a presentation physically and demonstratively crying, and the crying that was real. And the reason why this head of delegation was doing this about the sea level rise is because he said Tuvalu is about, I think, something like 4 meters above the sea level. And when the sea level rises, it will swallow Tuvalu immediately, because and other islands are about that level. So it is a serious issue, and it is very significant. And that is an example that I can give you for now. Others will give them to you later. Now, let me just get into the UN, together with the United Nations Religious Initiative in Africa and all of us and the conferences that have taken place, the World Environment Day, and the celebration on 31st May of 2019 here in Kenya. And as a former ambassador to Kenya Mission to UNEP, we did create a document, and that document is labeled, actually, when you look up in the link, it's called UNEP Religions and Environment, and there are about 11 or 15 or so religions, and in the issues of how they value and contribute to conserving nature. Now, the theme was Faith for Earth. We stand together to save the earth, and together we can beat air pollution, for example, that is threatening us. And that was, they are all highlighted in UNEP 2019, and we need to care for the environment with all our efforts and take them very seriously. Now, some of the global impacts, global efforts that are being done now, we can just say that in 2015, for example, there was a symposium held, particularly in Turkey, declaring climate change issues, and they urged the 1.6 billion Islamic followers globally to work on combating climate change, and governments to commit themselves, particularly in the Paris conference of the UN's FCC of 2015. And in addition to that, we also know from the Laudato Si and the document that other religious leaders have produced, and the Pope, for example, in the papal encyclica of 2015, and recognize the impacts of climate change, particularly Francis in 2015, and his document and his book, particularly the Laudato Si, that I know many of you may have them and have read them, and mobilizing and urging about 1.2 billion Catholic followers to actively protect and conserve nature in that document. Now, what I would like to say is that Laudato Si continues to remind the humanity about the severity of climate crisis. And I just want to say that Laudato Si is well written, well documented, and well supported.
I am moderating a conference. I wanted this electricity to be put on for me. Kutoka office, kutoka the other office. Thank you.
What's that? Okay, let me continue. Thank you. And I just want to say that Laudato Si continue helping us and contributing with other documents that have been written by other.
My face.
Yes? Can I continue? Can I continue? Hello?
Yes, please, Professor.
Oh, yeah. Let me continue. Okay. What I want to say is that Laudato Si is a very good document.
Prof, proceed, please. Sorry for
Okay.
your interruption.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I would like to just say that even the Laudato Si document these days, I cite some of the sections of it when teaching topics on climate change for my undergraduate.
Prof,
And,
I don't know what you have done. It's like we don't hear you now.
you don't hear me now?
Dr. Adan, I think you still have a problem with your mic because we can hear Prof clearly. At least I can.
I don't know. Maybe it's from my side. I don't hear. I don't know. Let me check again.
So if that is the case, what do I do? If the chair is not hearing me, and do we wait for him to solve the problems, or I continue? I don't know. Any suggestions?
Perhaps Mustafa could step in and offer direction at this juncture.
Professor, you can go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, let me continue then. So I was just saying, from Laudato Si, there is, I always have certain very good points that I share with my students, both undergraduate and postgraduate students, because it is a very resourceful, it is spiritual, it is practical, and it also, I think there is one section where Pope Francis is saying, let's ask for forgiveness from God because we have destroyed the good things that he gave us. And when we're asking for forgiveness, we also follow that with actions, and actions are to restore nature. And I think a number of us are doing this, and we want to continue with those efforts. Now, let's ask ourselves a few questions here. One of them is that, are we as human beings more superior to other living things, or what? Has the relationship between human beings and the environment changed dramatically? Or do all religions share the same belief on the sacredness of the environment? And from the literature that I've gone through, and the experiences that I've gone through, and the negotiations that we have gone through, for example, the COPs, all religions participate in this, and I think we share the same thing. So with these questions and more that anybody else may ask, let's take seriously and act and restore before it is too late. Now, the spiritual leaders at all levels are critical to the success of all that we do to what God gave us from the beginning. And I just want to say that when I was studying in the US many years ago in the 70s, I took a course that was talking about comparative religions. And I remember doing my paper on the Baha'i faith, the Christianity, the Islam, and the Jewish, the Judaism. And so I have taken a few examples of this. And what I want to say is that when you Google up UNEP, you will find about 15 or over 15 religions with what they plan to do, how they describe nature, and what nature has done. So in general, we all agree as religions of the world that we need to do something about the environment. And I just want to just say the Baha'i word, for example, is that nature is God's will and is its expression in and through the contingent of the world. And so that's what I would say. And I think if I go about the Christianity in highlighting some of this, is that Christianity, in quote, for example, here is that do not pollute the land where you are, because bloodshed pollutes the land and cannot be made for the land on which blood has been shed, except by the one who has shed it. Now, Laudato Si also supports this in the area or in the role of Christianity, that the science of climate change is clear, and that Catholic Church, for example, continues to contribute in the area of climate change as a moral issue that must be addressed in order to protect and conserve nature for everyone, for all of us. Now, Islam also contribute in this, and Islamic reflection is do not strut arrogantly on the earth. You will never split the earth apart, nor will ever rival the mountain's stature. Now, that is very critical. And I want to give an example here on Buddhism. And I just want to just take one example of Buddhism here on nature. There's one good thing that they use. Buddhism uses a bee, and many of us know what bees do and what they contribute to the environment, ecology, and all of us, and to producing honey. And when the bees are actually collecting their nectar to make the honey, you can see a bee flying from one flower to another, and within the same flowers of that plant, the bee always collects its nectar. And when it collects its nectar, I have never, or nobody has ever seen the bee destroying that flower where it collects the nectar. So I want us to follow the Buddhism and the bee example, that whatever we do on our planet, on our nature, on our resources, let's take care of them as the way the bee is taking care of the flowers in collecting the nectar for the honeys that we need. Now, I want to conclude with the Judaism, and also conclude finally, according to the religion, with the Taoism reflection. Judaism is also following along the lines of Christianity, and they say, for example, and God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb yielding which is upon all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed for you, or to benefit humanity, then, now, and always in the future." And that requires sustainability. Those trees need to be conserved. Those forests need not be destroyed. Now, what I want to conclude is that Taoism, or what they call Daoism, is an old Chinese religion based on the divine harmony between nature and humanity. Briefly, the Taoism principle consists of a path where we find the appropriate way to behave and to lead others. So in this regard, I think what this group is doing is helping us to coordinate, facilitate, lead others to participate in the conservation of nature and the environment. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, I have selected those samples from various religions around the globe, and those are what they have said, and we can continue. How is Okay, now what I would like to say is that how is this topic important? Because we have selected this topic today for this group, And what I'm noticing here is that there's a realization that the earth is in danger. And we are noticing all of those from what I've just said previously, from what we have read. And it is in danger from the activities that the chair this morning highlighting the issues, particularly when he said something anthropogenic activities that we human beings are producing, consumerism. And that danger and all those activities from all of us are contributing to these changes. And we need to make sure that we sustain life on Earth. And then I also cited Wendell Berry, an environmental activist, who stated that it is human carelessness and greed that is actually affecting us. And that has caused the environmental problem that we face today. Let me give you an example. During the Glasgow meeting, COP26, I watched a number of documentaries. One of the documentaries that scared me was the Amazon forest. And the leadership in the Amazon were using the Amazon forest and using the largest trucks to destroy the Amazon forest, which is we call it the lungs of the world. And that is greed, and that is not acceptable. We need to move on and see that we can change people's mind to restore nature. Therefore, we look to religion because it is what people believe and hold a large degree of responsibility for the start of our environmental problems. And we can also solve them through these efforts. And the impacts of climate change, very quickly. I don't know how long time I have. I better be told so that I don't go beyond time that is was assigned. What I want to highlight issues of impacts of climate change. Climate change impacts include the following: weather patterns, water supply and quality, agriculture and food, human health, shelters, vulnerable population around the globe, locally and globally, national security affected by this, and our ecosystem, the wetlands are being finished, are being dried up. And what I want to give you as an example is the weather patterns. Here, where I was born in Londiani in the 40s, and I'm just telling you that there were rivers that were flowing all the way from those 40s, 50s, even after independence. And let me tell you, one of the rivers that comes from the Londiani Hill on the way to Kericho, and the streams, even where my lady dad used to take me to the river, wash me. And I'm just telling you that I've taken my kid, my family, to show them that, and then to see the effects of the weather patterns coming out of the climate change that we as the members of the human race do. Let me just also give you an example of the weather patterns that are affecting this. And I just want to say, let me give you an example of Mount Kilimanjaro. Mount Kilimanjaro used to have ice on top of it. And in the year 2000, I think it's the year 2009 or 2007, I was participating in the Regional Office for Africa, headquarters housed in UNEP, and we are going to discuss about climate change issues. And what we did, we asked the pilot to ask the Tanzanian government whether that pilot can drive just very close to Mount Kilimanjaro to see the impacts of the melting ice locally here in the East African region. And the pilot took us there, and what we saw was very significant and very dangerous, because there is no more ice. Up on that mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro, are holes, and those holes are these contributing to weather pattern changes in many things that we witness. The impact of those you can see in the mangrove, You can see as the examples and the photos that I've given you there, and those are all the impact of climate change that we are foreseeing, we are witnessing, and we are experiencing, and it is impacting us negatively. Causes of climate warming and climate change. 95% of activities creating climate change are related again to human activities, anthropogenic activities that were highlighted earlier, pollution from vehicles, pollution from the industries, charcoal making, and all those are contributing to all of these things that we're discussing about. Now, examples of climate change in Kenya here, I'll highlight a few of them. And I just want to say that the International Energy Agency indicates Kenya's GHG emissions in 2007 were 11.3 liters. That is the way they describe them, and it is growing. And generally, we want to say that the emission from in the South, in the developing nations, are not as high as in the industrialized nations. So we want to continue keeping that low. And I know the effort the Kenya government is now making is to ensure that we reduce these emissions dramatically. This level is still low when compared to emissions of industrialized nations, as I've said. And I just want to say that the key drivers of the economy are primarily, of course, natural resources, and these are based and are climate sensitive. And we want to ensure that we take care of this. Further examples of climate challenges in Kenya, we have seen many of these things. The key drivers of the economy, again, are primarily natural resource based, and are climate sensitive. They get impacted very significantly. Let me give you an example. If some of you watched something on the TV yesterday, and in Mount Kenya, for example, I think it was in Kirinyaga or other places, farmers complaining about their tea. And what happened is the tea, because of the climate change, were all frozen, affected by the cold temperatures, and they cannot affect it. And many of them were crying and saying that these are impacting us significantly. What I also want to say is that our tourism industry in this country is being impacted by the climate change, and many of our animals are dying and having no water to drink and no food to eat. And you see very many disastrous things coming out of climate changes in this country. Our domestic animals, we have seen them, I think northern Kenya and other regions, very many dying animals, and the Kenya government, I think they have to do something about it that can help us. Now, what I want to continue saying here is types and strategies to address climate change. There are a number of them. Mitigation is one of them. Adaptation is the other. And I think, I do not know how much time I have. In these slides, if I may want to share with others later on, their mitigation and adaptation list, and I don't want to read all of them. For example, mitigation and adaptation are two strategies for addressing climate change in this country and elsewhere. And types of strategies, again, as we continue. In Kenya, there have been various efforts driven by the religious groups in raising awareness and discussing the issue of climate change and related challenges. And for example, Christian churches and church-related groups in Africa, the United States, and Europe gathered in Nairobi in October 2022, not too far ago, for a 2-day convocation meeting about climate issue that we are addressing at this meeting. And of course, the Egypt meeting, also religious groups were also there. They made their contribution. And as we continue, there are a number of them. I think what I only highlight a few things. One of the things that I want to highlight in this slide is the leaders drawn from Muslim, Christian, and Hindu faith launched an action plan to be implemented over the next 7 years, which includes, among other things, developing workshops, providing awareness to people regarding to environmental conservation, ending the use of plastic bags, conducting trainings on sustainable land management and rainwater harvesting, and promoting the conservation of forests. And I want to also highlight one thing here on this slide is that religion was crucial in reducing vulnerability to climate disasters, as religious organizations provided social and health services such as education, healthcare, and welfare support, especially the low-income countries where vulnerability to environmental stresses is greater. So we want to do all of those efforts. And on this slide, I just want to only highlight one issue that, interestingly, studies on religion and environment revealed that countries with low religious affiliation used more resources to promote development and produce more greenhouse gas emissions, but had higher adaptive capacity to climate impact because they were wealthy. So what we want to do is that be fair in whatever we do and implement things fairly, work all the efforts, maybe create effort of recognizing those who are contributing to the environment in a certain way. And I remember many years ago when I was creating NEMA, there was a section, and I think that section is there. We want to give recognition for those groups, individuals that have contributed to environment in one way or the other. And I think we want also to create that in this group and then work together with NEMA and other institutions around the globe. So what can we do? Dr. Prediger, a professor of Reformed Theology at Hope College in Holland, Michigan, quoted biologist Edward O. Wilson saying the following, quote, "Religion and science are the two most powerful forces in the world today. If two could be united on the common ground of biological conservation, the challenges of the environment would be solved soon." So let's take the heed, the suggestions from such leaders and religious as well as the scientists so that we can work together in harmony in solving our problems in Kenya, Africa, and the world. Now, the other thing that I would like to highlight here is that the promotion of good environmental behavior coming from a person's religious belief may be one approach to looking for a solution to environmental crisis that we are now facing. And some of us, many years ago, before 844, we had suggested, and I think KIE, then Kenya Institute of Education, developed curriculum and wanted to start the youth, the children from early years about the efforts of conserving nature. And I think even at Kenyatta University, for example, early childhood programs were started. And I remember we creating a paper of early childhood and environmental conservation, women and environment, and all of this. So all of us need to work on this and promote and practice. And then we'll be able to restore nature as soon as we can. Now, in conclusion, I want to conclude by quoting Gus Speth 207. And what he said is this, and this is a quote: I used to think the big three were climate, biodiversity, and pollution. But after many, many years of work, I think pride, apathy, and greed are even bigger. We need cultural and spiritual transformation, and science does not do that. The church does it. And we are here as groups from various churches, from religious groups. That is what I want to say, and I want to thank the group that invited me to make this presentation. And I just want to say that let's take all the efforts that we need to take, and above all, ask our Creator to help us and give us all the efforts and direct us, and we will be able to solve our problems. And in doing so, we in Kenya, NEMA, I think, has said no to plastic, but they seem to be coming back. They have said no to burning of those plastic and other things, and we need to abide and agree with that. And we need to make all the effort for our children to grow trees and do very many other things. And I want to just conclude by saying that at Kenyatta University, the Vice Chancellor has made me the chairman of the tree growing, the tree growing committee, that we do all the efforts in conservation within KU and outside KU. And as we talk even now, this is Wetland Day. Some of our own representatives are helping us in, I think it is in Narok. And
hello, Prof. Kindly wind up, please. Thank you. We have taken time.
Thank you. I'm now winding up, and thank you for all the efforts and everything else. Asante sana.
Thank you, Prof. I think you have done a great job, and we are really grateful for the good presentation. Thank you. I hope you will going to avail the paper so that we will be able to pick it up for the publication of the proceedings, inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please let me request my panelists to help me save some few minutes so that we will be able to really achieve the objective. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you Dr. Ann Nyatich Omabia, who is an environmental and climate change expert, and currently she is a deputy director, programs and partnership. We're now working with National Environment Management Authority. Dr. Omabia has 17 years experience in environmental management in various capacities from grassroots to national level, of which 30 years she has been involved in in-depth research and working experience in climate change field, where climate change mitigation, carbon markets, international climate change negotiation, and policy formulation were some of her great experiences. She has worked and managed various environmental programs and projects and partnerships. She has she has rich experience in environmental compliance and enforcement in the areas of air quality, waste management, chemicals and ozone depleting substance, and climate change and inter. She's one of the mitigation experts working with United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change roster of experts. She has more than 14 peer-reviewed publications, and she's a gazetted environmental inspector. Dr. Omabia has undergraduate degree in environmental science, master in environment and development, and she has got a doctor of engineering in environmental engineering from China University of Geosciences, Wuhan, China. It is my humble honor to ask Dr. to make a presentation. Please, it is 15 minutes. Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Omabia. Hello,
Thank
Dr.
you very
Omabia.
much. Can you hear me? I want to believe that you can hear me. And
yes.
I want to take this opportunity to first of all say that I'm making this presentation on behalf of the Director General of NEMA, Mr. Mamo Borumamo, who could not be able to attend in person, and he requested me to step in. And I also want to appreciate the invitation given to us as National Environment Management Authority. And if you allow, I will share my screen. I can see the host has disabled the participant screen sharing. If you could kindly allow me to share my brief presentation, I shall be able to.
Please, Secretariat, kindly allow Dr. Mabia to share the screen. Thank you.
Yes, you can go ahead, Doctor.
Thank you. Doctor, proceed.
It's not yet enabled, so I'm still waiting.
Wow. Secretariat, please.
But just to save on time, I will proceed to.
Please proceed, Dr. Just proceed.
Yes, I will proceed. I'm now able to do a brief presentation, and I am talking about what Professor has spoken about, and it's a great privilege to speak. He has just given us a very rich presentation, and I want to believe that we have been able to gain from it and to confess that he was our first Director General as the National Environment Management Authority. He has already mentioned that, and set out the role, the ball rolling on environmental management in this country. Just to proceed, and I'll be very brief, to introduce our organization, noting that this is an African conference, that the National Environment Management Authority is a government agency established by an act of parliament known as the Environmental Management and Coordination Act. And this act came into place in 1999. It has been revised over time to be responsive to the ever-changing environmental circumstances and also to respond to the Kenya Constitution, which we may be aware that Kenya promulgated a new constitution in 2010, and therefore various laws and regulations of the land are being revised to be able to conform with it. And one of them was the Environment Act, and it was given a new chapter, Chapter 387, but officially it is known as Environmental Management and Coordination Act, number 8 of 1999. Of course, we have revised it.
Mabia, you can kindly put on your camera. Thank you.
I will do that.
Okay.
I will do that. Sometimes it tends to interrupt with the internet flow, and so that's therefore.
Then proceed.
I have muted it. So the mandate of NEMA is to exercise general supervision and coordination of all matters related to the environment, and to be the principal arm of government to implement these policies, meaning that the NEMA, the National Environment Management Act, the National Environment Management Authority, has a very broad mandate of managing the environment. And that's why I entitled my presentation as environmental stewardship. And I will go further to explain this, what I mean by environmental stewardship. Our vision is to be a world-class environment management authority, and we are making progress towards achieving our vision, and we hope that we shall be able to achieve it over time. Last year, we were the best environment regulator in Africa. And also last year, we also won the UNEP second runners-up person of the year, meaning that we are making progress towards being a world-class environment authority through the various measures that we have achieved this. And this largely been mentioned by Professor, including the actions that we are taking in the management or the stewardship of the environment through the ban on plastics. Our mission comes from the Constitution of Kenya, which is to ensure a clean, sustainable, and healthy environment for all. And the Constitution goes on further to define the duties of the citizen, and that is the duty of the citizen is to cooperate with the state and national and county governments to keep the environment clean, sustainable, and healthy. So so I am a Christian, a Seventh-day Adventist by faith, and the Holy Bible states that in Genesis chapter 2, verses 15, that the Lord God placed the man in the land, the Garden of Eden, to tend and watch over it. That first sentence, I have picked it from the Good News Bible, which is the most simplified in terms of English of the Bible types. Another Bible version, yet another English version. We have different, for those who are not Christians, the Bible is one, but it has been written in different simplified forms of English and also customized to different countries, in the sense that you will note that we have the American, New American Standard Bible, meaning that the English used is what is popularly used in that particular country. So the Good News Bible, which is what students and other users commonly use, states that the Lord God placed the man in the Garden of Eden to tend and watch over it. When we tend, it means that you are a custodian, you are watching over, you are not the owner, but you are watching over it, meaning that the owner is different, and that is the Lord God. The New International Version uses to work it and to take care of it. Again, the stewardship comes into place. And then the King James Version, which is one of the initial English versions, which use the Queen's English or the King's English, uses the words to dress it and to keep it. And the American Standard Bible uses to cultivate it and to keep it. So we are seeing repetitively that we are more of custodians or stewards. And so in my introduction, I'd wish to say that the general environment pollution management in Kenya is a state, county, and citizen mandate. And therefore, the government has gone further to put in place policies, laws, regulations, and institutional frameworks to manage environmental pollution. As we may be aware that in the recent United Nations Environment Assembly that was held last year in February, that the world is currently addressing a triple planetary crisis. That is climate change, pollution in all its forms, that is going from plastic pollution, chemicals pollution, and others, and of course, the loss of biodiversity. Professor has mentioned a lot what the Bible says with regards to taking care of the environment and other faiths. Unfortunately, I've not been privileged to learn more about other faiths, but I have been taught over the years in church and at home on what the Bible says and individually. And the Bible is very clear on the role of man as a created being who is in the image and likeness of God and given stewardship over the environment. However, as human beings, we have taken a superiority approach, and therefore, through our increase in population, our change in consumer behavior or patterns, and other approaches of not caring for the environment, including a wrong attitude towards taking care of what in the environment language we call the global commons, that is that which you cannot own by yourself, but you share with others, and therefore subjected it to what ecologists call the tragedy of the commons. That now that it is not under me, I'm not directly responsible for it, I therefore sweep my house, make sure my house is sparkling clean, but throw or dump the rubbish just outside the road. The road is not mine, it belongs to the government and everybody else, and therefore you don't care about it. And therefore that's what we call the global commons, including the oceans. Yesterday was the World Environment Day. We were celebrating it in the county of Narok nationally, but all county governments in collaboration with NEMA and other partners held county-based celebrations. And the theme was, let us restore our wetlands. And this is what our cabinet secretary said, the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry. By the fact that the theme is let us restore our wetlands, it means that we have destroyed them. You can only restore that which you have destroyed. So in the first place,
Dr. you have 5 minutes to summarize.
That is in order, sir. That is in order,
sir. 5
sir.
minutes, thank you.
I'm well guided. I will summarize it. I don't have many slides, there are just 3 more left. And therefore, why have we destroyed the environment? It's because of our various linear approach. You buy, use, dispose, or make, use, and dispose. And therefore what is needed is actually a change in perception, in attitude, and our behavior towards the environmental management of the environment. And so what are the major challenges that we're facing in terms of management of the environment? We have pollution of the water, land, and sea, the chemicals management, the waste, the land degradation, biodiversity loss, ozone depletion, climate change, and loss of biodiversity, as I have mentioned. But globally, the world has come together over the years, and this professor has elaborated well. And we have sustainable development goals, which the country, together with other countries, have aspired to meet. And we all know them, the SDGs, no poverty and all that, including climate action and others. And all these are aimed at helping us go towards a low carbon, climate resilient, sustainable pathway. But who are we? This is who we are as human beings. One, it's as though that there's only one entity who is trying to make an effort of taking care of the environment, but this entity is facing a triple multi-hazard, multi-challenge, you could call it socio-economic, environmental, and of course, the human nature of sin, where we are selfish, and therefore you would see somebody making a lot of effort to take care of the environment, but instead destroys it. And this is what the head of state of this nation says, that the devastating disruptions due to climate change are undermining our progress and aspirations for economic development. As the late Wangari Maathai said, the Nobel laureate, she said that if you destroy nature, it will destroy you. And so therefore, as custodians of the environment, noting that the environment, we are part of the environment and the environment is created, and therefore we are an entity into it. And therefore we are created on the last day, according to the Christian faith. We are created on the 6th day because we needed all that which was created from the first to the last day to be able to survive. Whatever we do to destroy the environment disrupts our very being in all its spheres. As a country, we have policy, regulatory, and documents that guide us. And there are quite a number from the Environment Act, the Climate Change Act, the Public Health Act, the County-Based Acts, the Green Economy Strategy Paper. But having all these documents without a positive mindset or an attitude towards addressing the environment may not be of use to us. And so globally, there is environmental diplomacy, where we use diplomatic tools to negotiate, cooperate, and try to address the environment. However, as institutions, being a regulator, we also use the law enforcement, we do compliance and compliance assistance, and where litigation is required, we do litigate to ensure that humans are compelled to take care of the environment. But why should we push you to do that through having to go through a litigation process or an enforcement process, when in essence, the human beings, and as part of nature, we are able to rethink, do I actually need a second car when I already have one? Or as I manufacture that car, is there a way I can be able to make it in such a manner that at the end, it's not an electronic and metal waste? Can I regenerate it to make it function better? Can I, if I'm buying a new car, have an energy efficient hybrid system new car? Or if I'm building a home, can I make a green building? Am I able to recover materials from previously available substances? Can I reduce on my waste, reuse, and rethink? And so therefore, the government has approached a circularity approach to circular economy to waste management. And what are the way forward with regards to us as government? One, as custodians of the environment, then from the biblical perspective, that environmental stewardship is key, and government plays the role of being an enabler to environmental management in Kenya. And so therefore, as an enabler, we have put in place the laws, policies, and legislations to be able to take care of our environment. But the role of religion and the role of the various faiths that exist is to be able to change the attitude, the perception, how we view what the environment is to us. Is it a God? No, it's not a God. There's only one God according to the Christian faith. And therefore, everything that is created needs to be taken care of through a positive influence from the family level and the religious communities for us to be able to take care of the environment, to influence a change in perception that will lead to a change in our attitudes and eventually, hopefully, our behavior. And in this dispensation of the climate change, the Principal Secretary, I am concluding, sir, 1 second. The Principal Secretary of Pakistan said this, that yes, developing countries are vulnerable, but vulnerability shouldn't be a death sentence to us all. And therefore, what we can do is to reduce our own vulnerability before we call actions on others, is to take up the stewardship role that is enshrined in each one of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Omabia, for very good, well-timed presentation. You have really served us quite a good number of minutes. God bless you and thank you. And we really appreciate that. Please remember to pass that particular representation to us so that we can really appreciate and come up with a proceeding. Thank you so much, Dr. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my single honor once again to read and present to you the biography of Dr. Joram Tarusarira. Dr. Joram is an assistant professor of religion, conflict, and peace building, former director of Center for Religion, Conflict, and Globalization at the University of Groningen. His areas of expertise are religion, conflict, peace building, reconciliation, climate change, conflict, and religion. His research is connected to Sustainable Development Goals, namely climate action, SDG number 13, peace, justice, and strong institutions, SDG number 16. He leads the project currently titled Invoking the Sacred Towards Alternative Strategies Against Climate Conflict. He is the author of Reconciliation and Religio-Political Nonconformism in Zimbabwe, 2016, and co-editor with E. Chitado of Religion and Human Security in Africa, 2019, Themes in Religion and Human Security. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome Dr. Joram to make his presentation. Please, it is 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to give my presentation also today on this occasion. And thank you for the invitation to this very important conference that is focusing on the environment with focus on Laudato Si. So in the interest of time, I will go straight to my talk, which is going to focus on religious and sacred worldviews with also an interest in climate security. Firstly, terms like religion and climate security are those terms which are unlikely to be found in the same sentence because they are dealt with by different types of disciplines. Secondly, these terms are very much condensed and they are also contested. But I don't plan to get deep into that debate because we won't be able to settle that debate today. So what is it that I want to share with you today? Of recent, I've been focusing on climate security with a view to finding out how non-economic and non-material factors such as religion, spirituality, or worldviews shape climate-related security risks, especially climate-related conflicts. The discourse and practice of climate security is dominated by scholars, policymakers, and practitioners who prioritize, for the most part, economic and physical or material variables. But the question is, how can this be when most of the affected areas, like African contexts, are highly religious? And most of the climate security research has been done in Africa. So before we go any further, we need to clarify what we mean by climate security, because this term is going to recur as I continue. So the climate security discourse focuses on the significant ramifications of climate change for patterns of conflict, insecurity, and instability, to put it broadly. But it's important to note that the term climate security is a shorthand for climate-related or climate-induced conflicts. This means that there is no causal relationship between climate change and security risks, or between climate change and conflict or violence. Climate change is referred to as a threat multiplier or a risk multiplier. It accelerates instability. What it basically signifies, that is the category or the term or the phrase threat multiplier, what it signifies is that on its own, climate change does not cause conflict. Furthermore, it does not automatically multiply existing threats. So climate change does not automatically multiply existing threats. It contributes to conflicts in combination with other factors such as poverty, poor governance, or other socioeconomic or political variables. So this term, we might be interested in that it anchored climate change. So the term climate change as threat multiplier, it anchored climate change in foreign and defense policy agendas and generated political pressure to step up climate action. So what is our point of departure? So climate change is fueling security risks in different parts of the world, and this happens in various ways. Firstly, we might think of climate change's impact on livelihoods. Worsening livelihood conditions can contribute to escalating grievances or competition and clashes over dwindling resources. Secondly, we might think in terms of climate-induced mobility, which can increase the risk of community-based violence and conflict when migrants come into confrontation with other groups. Thirdly, we can think in terms of armed groups using climate impacts or the strain of climate-related impacts to boost their recruitments. And last but not least, we can also think in terms of how local elites can use instability to advance their control over resources and use resources to further their strategic aims and strengthen their position in local conflicts. These are some of what we call climate security risk pathways. There can be many more, and they depend with the context, or they depend on the context. So of recent, I've been doing some work on climate-related security risks and sacred worldviews. Why did I choose to do this? This was out of the observation that some communities experiencing climate-induced conflicts survive on natural resources such as land, water, or cattle, which they consider and value as sacred. And it was also out of the observation that in conflicts that may involve such resources, religious difference can harden boundaries between conflicting parties, and alliances can be built along religious lines of difference, thereby portraying the conflict in zero-sum terms and demonizing the opponent as morally inferior, militarily dangerous, hence to be dealt with harshly. It was also out of the recognition that some communities mobilize religion for purposes of peace, and we have many examples of religious leaders' involvement in transforming conflicts. So I've therefore been interested in how, these variables that are non-economic and non-material, and here with a special interest on religion, spirituality, or sacred worldviews, shape climate-induced conflicts. And with this question, what I seek to do is to raise a research agenda that I think has received less attention from scholars of climate security and those in religion and ecology. So my observation was that we need to understand how these kind of variables also influence or shape climate-related risks. But when I say that scholars from climate security and scholars in religion and ecology have not dealt with the question of sacred worldviews or spirituality when it comes to the climate security risks, I think it is in order that we briefly look at the genealogy of the climate security discourse or the climate conflict discourse. So climate security scholars have used what is known as the resource scarcity theory to try to explain the relationship between climate and conflict. And this is a theory that basically says that when there are fewer resources, people will compete and clash over the remaining few. The focus, therefore, is on whether there are enough resources or not. However, we know that resource scarcity can contribute to conflict just as it can contribute to peace and cooperation. Likewise, resource abundance can contribute to conflict just as it can contribute to peace. So this theory is inadequate to explain why climate change impacts translate to conflict. Hence, we need to look elsewhere for possible explanations. Methodologically and epistemologically, the discourse of climate change and climate security has been dominated by techno-scientific approaches, big data, statistical analysis of large number studies. The responses are what one might call secular and technical because they're secular and technical because of their focus on positivist quantitative approaches. But here we can also revert to Pope Francis's concern. Pope Francis perceives the ecological crisis as a spiritual problem as well, and on that basis, he challenges those who make hyper-technical solutions to be careful that they are not merely upholding the myth of progress and are not telling us that ecological problems will solve themselves simply with the application of new technology. I think this is a very important point. So technological approaches have no doubt contributed a lot to our understanding of the relationship between climate and conflict, but they fail to explain the texture of these conflicts. However, addressing climate security risks holistically and effectively requires knowledge about norms, knowledge about values, knowledge about perspectives and preferences of the affected people. But don't get me wrong, the full power of the natural science and smart technologies is vital for the most up-to-date understanding of the climate system and for capturing security risk patterns. However, numbers are often prioritized over stories, and graphics and numbers can both oversimplify the intricacy of the problem. Climate change challenges can both oversimplify, so climate change challenges are local and they're too complex to be analyzed only through general scientific and technological approaches. And also, please note, when we talk about factoring in sacred worldviews, it doesn't mean deploying them uncritically. Rather, it means to analyze how they affect and they are affected by climate change challenges. So because of the resource scarcity theory and the preference for quantitative methods, policymakers have neglected context-specific variables such as cultural circumstances and the social constructedness of the value of resources, including sacred worldviews, which are of interest to our discussion. Religion and ecology scholars have focused on how religious norms and perspectives specific to particular faith traditions influence climate change mitigation and adaptation. But my observation is that they did not look into how sacred worldviews contribute to igniting, strengthening, weakening, or reversing the conflict that emerges when climate change goes beyond the adaptive capacities of communities or adaptation strategies go wrong, or when people's livelihoods are negatively impacted, and so forth. Now,
Professor Jerome, you have 5 minutes to summarize. Thank you.
it is very important now that we take a look at actually what we mean by the idea of the sacred. As you have seen, there are limitations in the current theories and explanations. So we need to look elsewhere for possible explanations. And this is what I've been trying to do. And I've been working with the concept of sacred worldviews. I understand sacred worldviews as the absolute normative, life-guiding social imaginaries, beliefs, symbols, and practices that for the most part exert non-negotiable claims on the conduct of social life. And people use them to make sense of life and structure their moral boundaries. So in the communities I did research, sacred worldviews shape how the environment is respected, how the environment is revered, and how it is considered dispensable or indispensable, divisible or indivisible, thus demarcating sacred boundaries that must be protected. And when the boundaries are broken or threatened, for instance, during competition over scarce resources, it leads to an unquestionable ramping up of sacred moral commitments in defense of the resource. We might want to think here about pastoralists and cattle raiders, for instance, who sacrifice their lives to protect their and increase the number of their sacred cattle. To understand and address conflicts in which natural resources are considered sacred, insights into how sacred worldviews function in society are thus required. And I mean, it's also very important to take into consideration what local communities, indigenous communities also think and how they structure their cognitive, emotional, and moral meanings. Because this is what guides them. This is what guides their thoughts. This is what guides their attitude, and this is what guides their behavior. And I think here I mention indigenous communities and spiritualities because we also know that Pope Francis was very much concerned about indigenous spiritualities. He actually said that many intensive forms of environmental exploitation and degradation exhaust the resources which provide local communities with their livelihood and also undo the social structures which for a long time shaped cultural identity and their sense of the meaning of life and community. He thus recommends that it is essential to show special care for indigenous communities and their cultural traditions. What are the implications for climate-proof peace and security as I conclude? So current climate peace and security approaches advocate the techno-rational, inclusive, and equal distribution of the available resources. They also interrogate how communities can manage common natural resources in the best way possible. But conflicts that incorporate sacred claims cannot always be resolved through splitting the resource in question or through payments. In conflicts over sacred resources, the resources cannot always be divided, they cannot always be replaced, they cannot be violated, they cannot be monetized. So the usual conflict resolution strategies would thus not work. So understanding cultural perceptions and rationalities, such as sacred beliefs and practices of communities, could thus help policymakers understand why some communities defend their resources so intensely, leading to intractable conflicts. It will also illuminate our understanding of why and how they position themselves in the way they do, how communities position themselves in the way they do when they defend their natural resources. So more understanding is required beyond technical knowledge and technical reports. And in situations where individuals and communities have sacred relationships with the natural environment, conflicts over their resources become moral conflicts that go beyond the resources in question. They cease to be about truths or falsehoods, which can be settled technically, and become issues about right or wrong, which is the domain of morality and subsequently religion and spirituality. So I want to finish by saying that the call to deploy sacred worldviews to interrogate climate-induced conflicts is not aimed at displacing scientific and technical perspectives. We know that Laudato Si, for example, is well-founded on scientific knowledge. So to call for the deployment of sacred worldviews is not to displace or call for the displacement of scientific and technical perspectives. Far from it, it is rather a call to integrate different perspectives towards a holistic and effective understanding and addressing climate-related conflicts. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very happy to have been able to make this contribution. Asante sana.
Thank you so much, Professor Joram, for that elaborate analysis of articulating or analyzing climate change and environment issues from different perspectives. We are really grateful and honored to have you this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me now to bring on board my brother David N. Munene, whom I have the honor to present to you his short bios. David is the programs manager at the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa, which is a regional network that offers platform for young Catholics in Africa to respond to the twin challenges of environmental degradations and climate change by living Laudato Si through networking, advocacy, formation, and awareness creations at the grassroots actions. He's a regional facilitator for African major groups and stakeholders to the UNEP environmental program, and is advisor to the UNEP Faith for Earth Youth Council, and sits on the board of Southern African Faith Communities Environment Institute, SAPSEI. David is a Young African Leaders Initiative Fellow and served as the first national president of the Kenya Ecosystem-Based Adaptation for Food Security Assembly branch. He has been involved in UNEP and African and AMASEN process since 2014 and continues to support the engagement and application of the voices of African civil society organizations, particularly that of youth. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to invite David to make his presentation. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ali Adan, for very excellent moderation hitherto, and I thank my previous colleague presenters for their very, very valuable
15 minutes, thank you.
Yes, sure. I will begin sharing my screen.
Secretariat, enable screen sharing, thank you.
It's enabled now.
Right. Just a second as I pull it up. Kindly confirm that you're able to see my screen.
Yes, it is coming up. Thank you. There you are.
All right. So I think there's a bit of a challenge. Let me just go back a bit. All right, so I will be sharing my presentation concerning environment, Laudato Si, and African youth, this being a session that was on environment with focus on Laudato Si. However, I'm going to draw
David, just go to PowerPoint from the beginning so that the slide is full. Thank you.
I think I've pulled it up. Maybe it's a bit slow on that end, but I imagine it should come up. Just confirm when you're able to see my title slide.
Proceed.
Are you able to see my title slide, Dr. Adan?
Yes, African youth and Laudato Si.
No, that's not the title slide. I think, let me just open.
Oh, now, yes, now it is there. Yes, it is there now. Please proceed.
Better.
One moment, sir. All right, so I think we should have it now.
Yes.
Yes. So I will present on environment, Laudato Si, and African youth. I will draw from the insights of my understanding, my limited understanding of African traditions hitherto, and also based on experience and interactions with young people. Being the regional facilitator and programs manager for SINESA, I've been able to work with young people across diverse contexts, and I will base my insights on experience as well as on the application of Laudato Si as a bedrock upon which SINESA's work lies. Before that, allow me to give a bit of background information about SINESA. SINESA is the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa, As it indicates, we are founded on the basis of the Catholic faith.
David, sorry,
But-
are you able to go to the PowerPoint where I am pointing? I don't know if you are able to see here. So that it
I
will go
am
full screen.
okay. One moment. Let me reshare again. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Thank you.
So I think you can now see my presentation.
Yes, please.
Is
Very
that
well.
right,
Proceed.
Dr. Adam? Can you
Proceed.
confirm? All right. Allow me to proceed quickly since I've already taken about 2 minutes now. So a bit about Sinesa is that we are founded on the basis of the Catholic faith. However, this does not mean that we only work with young people within the Catholic faith alone. Indeed, we work with Catholics, non-Catholics, and non-Christians as well. And in our teams, we have such young people that we work with. The only thing that we ensure is that we are founded on the basis of Catholic social teaching and how we interact. To give an example is like a Catholic church opening a school. It does not open it for Catholic faithful children only. It opens it up to everyone, but the basis of its operation is guided by the Catholic faith. We are also focused on young people, and we define young people legally as 18 to 35. However, increasingly with the demands of the times, we have found ourselves working with young people below the age of 18 because we catch them young when they are in schools and early enough so that they can become leaders better than we are ourselves today. We are a network, and therefore this means that we are not a member-driven organization. We really operate as a network with various core team members around various countries. We are present in 10 countries now and focusing on about another 4 countries where we shall be developing networks. We are also an environmental organization, and we focus on environment and climate change from a faith-based perspective. Sustainability in our case means that the resources available now should be used in a manner that will allow for future generations to enjoy them, because we really have borrowed them from future generations instead of inheriting them from previous ones. We are focused on Africa, as Africa really is our mother. And when we refer to the common home, we refer to the globe and refer to our continent as well, in the words of Laudato Si. Our network is that of young Catholics in Africa who care for our common home. And this initially was not the case because we were founded in 2012, but received international registration as an NGO in Kenya in 2014. You would notice that that was before the release of Laudato Si on May 24th, 2015. And this now required that we readjust our focus to become the network of young Catholics in Africa caring for our common home, addressing environmental degradation and climate change. Our purpose is in the spirit of Laudato Si, to nurture an ecological conversion rooted in Catholic social teaching principles. And through an active network of young people, we bring together the whole human family to seek sustainable and integral development. In the subsequent slides, I'm going to share with you environmental stewardship as a context in Africa. Just to mention that that is my mother in her farm, and I thought that this is a better way to personalize my sharing today. So environmental stewardship seemingly in Africa is ideally inherent. It is a way of life. I did not need to be instructed in a brick and mortar class about how to take care of environment, about how to conserve water, to live in a clean environment, and so on and so forth. I was not taught in a class about how to take care of animals and how important they were in our lives. I was not taught in a class not to cut down a tree, but to harvest its branches for firewood, even though we required it every day. I was taught that at home because this was a way. My father did not know about Laudato Si, neither did he attend an environmental class to understand that he needed to grow indigenous trees on his farm and practice agroecology as much as he could within his limited means. Then in Africa, it is increasingly clear that environmental stewardship is not an individual effort, it is communal and it is social. And I will draw correlates between these and what Laudato Si says about the same. So this being a communal effort, it means society comes together, and when it fails, environmental stewardship has failed, then society is affected as a community and as a society. I will quote the works of Mazzocchi 2020, and who indicates that cosmologically in Africa, all things are interrelated, mutually dependent, and ideally one. And that I saw when I was growing up in central Kenya. Environmental education was deeply rooted. I remember countless riddles and proverbs, stories and songs that made reference to features of the environment and placed me at near equal position and pedestal with everything else, and showing that every creature, everything that had life, that which was invisible and visible, and everything that didn't have life was deeply important for my existence as a human being, as an African. Our traditional systems are built around environmental stewardship, including naming of children. For example, I have in my community people who are called Njogu, which means elephant, and so on and so forth, just to remind them about the significance of the environment in which they live, thrive, and depend on. They were also places of worship. I still see our elders gathering today in central Kenya under trees like the fig tree, the Mogumo tree, to worship, and this has been a tradition that was passed on even before Christianity was introduced. I like to link this to the protection. Forests were integral in the reclaiming of our lands from the colonial masters. And the Mau Mau rebellion, I think the story is told in various forests, including our Karura forest here in Kiambu, Nairobi, and in Kiambu and Nairobi, which traverses both areas. And you can see the significance of this. They ran to the forest because they knew that that is where they could thrive, that is where they could be protected away from the colonial masters' brutal killings. Then I look at environmental stewardship now in the context of Laudato Si, now that I have come to work within the context of Laudato Si through SAINESA. The second chapter of Laudato Si indicates clearly, if not all chapters, that this is rooted in the Holy Christian Scriptures, the Bible. And chapter 2 is indeed titled The Gospel of Creation. And this references makes references to what Dr. just made reference to, Genesis, especially on the issue of dominion as being a call to responsible stewardship and not necessarily dominance. And in Laudato Si, paragraph 237, it shows that the Eucharist in the Catholic Church, which is central, the celebration of the body and blood of Jesus Christ, our Savior. The Eucharist is also a source of light and motivation for our concerns on the environment, and it directs us to be stewards of all creation. So the call of stewardship is both African, and it is both in Laudato Si, and it's also in Laudato Si. And again, I say that in the African traditional society, environmental stewardship takes a social and communal approach. And this is seen in Laudato Si paragraph 49 as well, that a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. But in Laudato Si, there's an extrapolation and further explication of what this means in terms of effects on the economics, on the development, and the social lives of our people. In Africa, I was taught when growing up that everything has an effect on something else just because it is part of the environment. In Laudato Si, it has been mentioned at least 4 times that everything is interconnected and interrelated. I'll just take a sample of those. In Laudato Si paragraph 70, it says everything is interconnected, and this is reiterated in paragraph 138 and paragraph 240 verbatim. In paragraph 120, Laudato Si reads that everything is interrelated. Now, I will then consider some principles drawn from the Judeo-Christian tradition, which can render our commitment to the environment more coherent, and this can be found in Laudato Si paragraph 13. This is why then environmental education must lead to give ecological ethics its deepest meaning. So the protection of the environment, as reads Laudato Si paragraph 141, is in fact an integral part of the development progress and cannot be considered in isolation from it. And continuity is essential because policies related, for example, to climate change and environmental protection cannot be altered with every change of government. And this borrows heavily even.
David, you have 4 minutes to summarize. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I will proceed to look at the African youth and Laudato Si. There's an increasing awareness on the challenges, but this is largely concentrated in the urban areas. But most of them are not aware of Laudato Si, including Catholics. Most are non-knowledgeable, and this does not necessarily mean that they are ignorant. For the difference, check the works of Smithson, 1985. They tend to be detached, especially from good tradition. And Fratelli Tutti, paragraph 19 says that detachment from tradition is depriving young people of a necessary connection to their roots and a wisdom that the young cannot achieve on their own. And in paragraph 13, we see the disconnection from history, which is evident in most of the young people, that there is a growing loss of the sense of history, which leads to even further breakup. The young people are living in constant strife, and when you engage with them, you see issues such as unemployment, discordant societies, and now they face the environmental degradation brand now and in the future. In the words of Pope Francis, the young people are the now of God and they must take leadership. What does Laudato Si do in our case? It validates the challenges and fears of the African youth today and provides anchored compass for faith-based, science-informed, and indigenous knowledge-backed action. There is also ecological spirituality, which is covered in the entire chapter 6 of Laudato Si, and this provokes thought into action with practical solutions. If I refer to paragraph 16 of Laudato Si, there is a call to seek other ways of understanding the economy and progress, the value proper to each creature and human meaning of ecology, the need for forthright and honest debate, the serious responsibility of international and local policy, and the throwaway culture and the proposal of a new lifestyle. Still, even with these strifes, even with the challenges existing, the young people demand change, as reads paragraph 13 of Laudato Si. And they wonder how anyone can claim to be building a better future without thinking of the environmental crisis and the sufferings of the excluded. And this links directly to the Catholic social teaching principles on care for creation and preferential option for the poor. And all the Catholic social teaching principles are based on the principle of human dignity. If you would like to get in touch, those are our contacts. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram as Inessa, and we will be happy to respond to you as well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, my brother David N. Munene, for very good presentation. I'm sure that we're going to stimulate a lot of excitement from youth, and we look forward to the full paper so that it will be part of our proceeding. Thank you so much for your time and honoring us with your presence. God bless you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor once again to invite Sister Mary Francis Wangari Sebastian, and allow me to present to you her rich biography. Sister Mary studied pastoral theology in Moshi, Tanzania from 94 to 96, and she's a member of the Little Sister of St. Joseph. She currently serves as the Director of Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation, Franciscan Africa office in Nairobi. She has trained women peacemakers, human rights responders, and emergency responders, and done radio scripting for human rights education and advocacy in schools at the Kenya Institute of Education, currently KICD, as a lead human rights with the teachers from 2008 to 2010. She has worked with Franciscan International to implement training on making human rights work for people living in extreme poverty, and successfully helped advocate for Mukuru slums to reach the status of a special planning area by the Kenya government. She has trained Franciscan animators on various approaches in advocacy to the ministries, holding peaceful and credible electoral campaigns, providing emergency response to the needy, offering intervention to crisis of youth radicalization in Kenya. She has received a global golden award for planting 1 million trees. You need to clap for Sister Francisca for that great achievements. And I hope she will going to double more her efforts again to contribute, maybe raise this now to 1 billion with your team that exists. Promoting Laudato Si, she has launched and expanded a birthday tree planting campaign regionally in multiple African countries with youth program. She promotes and champions care for our common home and unity in diversity. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to request Sister Mary to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As you have heard from my brief bio, I want to go straight to my sharing. I might not be able to share the screen.
Please, Secretariat, you can enable Mary to share her screen. If not, Sister Mary, in case of an emergency, please plan to have another option. Thank you.
Yes, maybe I'll have another option because I'm depicted.
Sister Mary, you can share. You are allowed to share now. Thank you.
Okay.
Sister Mary, are you making progress?
Yes, I'm trying to share, but I can't.
Okay, so though, because of interest of time, I
Yes.
will request that you can just present, focus on your special areas that you really want to pass the message without so much of going into background. Thank you.
All right, I'm presenting something about the Laudato Si. As we all know, I'm a Franciscan, and as a Justice and Peace and Integrity of Creation Office, we are carrying on the creation of awareness on Laudato Si. Pope Francis speaks of the new era in which humanity has entered and seeks to respond to one of the greatest challenges of our times, namely the alarming state of our common home. Our common home is endangered. Our common home is crying. And now, faced with this global environmental deterioration, the Pope invites us to walk and to enter into a dialogue with him for the care and about care of our common home. And as Franciscan office, we follow the values of St. Francis of Assisi. The Laudato Si means, praise be to you, my Lord. And it's a call to us, an urgent call to care for our common home. What is happening in our common home? We can see unjustified state of the earth, a totally extraordinary situation that we find ourselves in, which is starting as a starting point of an encyclical of which the very first chapter is emotionally titled. So the Pope begins with a physical description of crisis of our common home, basing himself on solid scientific evidence and carefully selected empirical data, as he himself states, drawing on the results of the best scientific results available today. As you have heard in my bio, we as Justice and Peace and Integrity of Creation have tried to champion the care of our common home through environmental care, and more so by launching the birthday campaign in Kenya, and it is now extended to most of the Eastern Africa countries. To begin with, as a previous speaker said, that Professor Wangari Maathai always urged us to care for the nature. She says, if you destroy the nature will destroy you in return. And so, as a Franciscan office, we are working towards creating this awareness and restoring our nature, our mother nature, and restoring our mother earth. When we look at what is happening, Pope Francis offers a mastery synthesis of the manifold manifestation of contemporary ecological crisis. The crisis of our very home, pollution and waste, climate change, depletion of natural resources, especially water. And currently we are faced with the climate change challenges, the drought which should be declared as a national disaster. We are finding that the people who live in semi-arid areas, especially I would like to give an example of Kajiado County, where I'm involved into responding, trying to give hope to the people of this area who are the Maasai. Marginally, they depend on cattle raising. At the moment as we speak, most of their cows are dead, they have no water, and they have no food. And this is all about climate change. This climate care of our common home, we ask each and everyone, when you have your birthday, to make sure that you plant 1 tree. If you cannot plant the 50 trees, if your birthday is 50 trees, it's 50 years. What is it on climate change that we need to do? The climate crisis, as Pope is inviting us, is an injustice. It's calling us to fight this monster, an unjust. And for us, we fight for this through interfaith dialogue, through interfaith youth forum. We congregate the youth, over 1,000 youths in the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, and we carry on different activities. One, we march for climate strike. We do climate strike. Two, we create awareness through Laudato on care for our common home. And we also invite people, even those who are doing their marriages, either in Muslim way or Christian way, to make it a Laudato wedding or ceremony, where we plant trees and plant it as a beginning of our family. Allow me to share with you what is happening. In most of the cases, Pope is calling us to see the big things, but not the small thing. When we look at the experience of COVID-19, all of us were focusing on ourselves, on washing of our hands. You cannot enter in a mosque without washing your hands. You cannot enter into the church. You cannot enter into your place of worship. But we forgot about the monster of climate change. We forgot about recession. And therefore, Pope is addressing us, asking us to focus on the big things that are destroying our life, that are destroying our climate, and more so to care for our common home. Thank you so much. I end there.
Okay, thank you so much, Sister Mary Francis Wangari, for very good reminder that we need to unite to see how best we can mitigate the impact of climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our panel that was trying to examine religion, environment, and climate issues, how we can have a common frontiers to really promote further dialogue and engagement on this matter. On behalf of all the partners who have joined their hands to make this Global Second Conference a success, allow me to thank Professor Michael Kipkorir Koech, who was our first speaker. Allow me also to thank Dr. Anne Nyatichi Omambia. Allow me to thank Dr. Joram Tarusarira. Allow me also to thank my brother David N. Munene and Sister Mary Francis Wangari Sebastian for excellent presentation. They have really proposed an area of opportunity where interventions can be achieved. We're very grateful and we're really honored to have you as our keynote speakers. during this particular second global conference on Fratelli Tutti and Laudato Si. Our eyes are open. We are now able to see the reality that is present around our homes, present around our institution, issues that are challenges that are related to climate change that is present in our own institution. Ladies and gentlemen, we have all what it takes now that we are inspired. We are able to really provide good stewardship, good leadership, good inspiration to really address some of the challenges that has been identified. So on my behalf and on behalf of Secretariat, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you, and God bless you all. Thank you.